America is a country that was founded for the purpose of allowing Christians to do their duty before God and not to have their consciences ruled by the doctrines and commandments of men. Reese Fund exists in order to see the 10 Commandments properly applied, not just as a plaque on the wall, but to actually be used in business as though they're commandments from God that we're supposed to obey. Our goal is to find businesses and to buy them and to build them up. We want to find manufacturing businesses and use them to make sure that we can maintain our capacity to do things here. Reese Fund, Christian capital, boldly deployed.
The American church really is gay.
Are you asking me out on a date?
Effeminate.
The Bible appears more to whisper when it comes to sexual sin.
Shallow.
I said, I want the African-American 7.
And full of cowardly leaders.
Are we going to keep bickering over secondary issues?
America desperately needs to return to the Father. Either we fall on the rock and are broken, or we fall on the ground and are crushed under that rock. To fall on top of the rock and be broken is exactly the condition in which God brings reformation and revival. So which way is it, Prodigal America? Are you coming home to the Father? Join us this Reformation Day in Fort Worth, Texas, October 31st through November 2nd at Will Rogers Event Center, just days before our presidential election. And join with the thousands of us for the blessing of gathering together with God's people and celebrating God's goodness with beer and psalms. Hear from speakers such as Dr. James White, Pastor Toby Sumter, Pastor Doug Wilson, Dr. George Grant, Gabe and Knox, Steve Dace, and more. Don't forget our Business Makers Conference, Jumpy Castles for the kiddos, after parties, single events, the Pastor's Luncheon, the Business Leaders Luncheon, and many more surprises coming. America has squandered her inheritance far too long. It's time she repents and returns home to her Father. Fight, Laugh, Feast presents Prodigal America.
Welcome to Cross Politic Live in the studio. It's Thursday, isn't it? Evening. I don't know what day it is.
It's Thursday.
It feels like Thursday. Pastor Toby, Chuck Knox, I'm the Water Boy. It's good to be with you. We're going to be in Fort Worth at Prodigal America, prodigalamerica.com. In October, we can't wait to be with you guys there. We got a number of things going on. We have our corporate dinner for our corporate partner relationships. It's actually on Wednesday night. We don't really advertise that, but it's for corporate partner. It's for our corporate partners and for those who
there's still time to become a corporate partner. You can become a corporate partner and get an invite.
And we actually got to add here, you'll read in a second, but Patriot Mobile is sponsoring that corporate partner event. So if you guys want to join our corporate partnership,
that dude likes some good meat.
Yeah, we're going to oh my gosh. Billy Bob's. Wow. We're going to Billy Bob's for a corporate partner. There might even be some bull riding there.
That sounds great. What's Billy Bob's?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. You guys don't know Billy Bob's? Oh man, you're gonna find out.
Is it like McDonald's?
No.
But for Texas folks?
It's a hee-haw of a good time. Let me just put it that way.
That doesn't mean nothing to me.
It doesn't. Well,
so bring your cowboy boots.
Bring your cowboy hat and cowboy boots.
Okay.
There you go. It should
right.
be fun. And get ready to ride a mechanical bull maybe. The best corporate partner wins.
Whoa.
What do they win?
If they don't pull a hammy.
I want to see Knox.
Why are you always trying to get me on a camel?
Trying to get a camel.
You're trying to get me to do all kinds of stuff. Now you want me on the board. It's not happening.
We got that great video of you on that golf cart.
Yeah, that's true.
So I just thought,
And you wonder why I don't want to do it again. That one I was in control of.
But you recovered so beautifully.
That's what you want. You want to see me recover.
I want to see
We want to see him fly off and land on his feet.
You don't usually recover from a bull. So.
I don't know. I believe in you, Knox. I believe in you. Do you find yourself turning on the news and feeling hopeless? Woke agendas, open borders, inflation, the list goes on. There's something you can do. Buy from companies that believe what you and I believe. We need to stick together now more than ever, and there has been one company willing to stand with you since 2012. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They offer the very best nationwide 4G and 5G coverage on all networks. In fact, they use the same towers as the major carriers. Patriot Mobile has service plans to fit any budget, and their 100% US-based customer support team provides exceptional customer support. More importantly, Patriot Mobile shares your values and supports organizations fighting for religious freedom, your constitutional rights, and the sanctity of human life, and our veteran and first responder heroes. Switch to Patriot Mobile now. Get free activation with the offer code CROSSPOLITIC. So go to patriotmobile.com/CrossPolitic and then use the promo code CROSSPOLITIC to get that activation fee waived.
Switch over. I mean, just switch. I'm doing on a lot of our phones. We still got some contracts that we're working through with AT&T, but we're moving over, and they've been great. And working with their U.S. based customer service has been fantastic, and they're going to be at our.
You
corporate
just call them
partner
sometimes
event.
just to chat with them. And hang
I
out.
do, yeah.
You're like, hey guys, how's it going?
Well, it's hilarious because I actually
days.
have their cell phone numbers and I text them. Texting customer service.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic.
It's unbelievable. Yeah.
You can't even do that with AT&T or Verizon.
No, it's pretty trippy.
The mission of Armored Republic is to honor Christ by equipping free men with tools of liberty
And
necessary
protect your kids from public schools.
to preserve God-given rights. In the Armored Republic, there's no king but Christ. We are free craftsmen. Body armor is a tool of liberty. We create tools of liberty. Free men must remain ever vigilant against tyranny wherever it appears, and it's appeared here, apparently. God has given us the tools of liberty needed to defend the rights he bestowed to us. Armored Republic is honored to offer you those tools. So visit them at AR500armor.com, AR500armor.com.
So this past week, everyone's been probably paying attention to the news. There's been another school shooting, this time in Appalachia High School in Georgia. It looks like that.
It's like
what we know, 4
fatalities,
dead, 9 injured, and there's still tons of ambiguity around what happened.
Did the shooter get apprehended, or is he one of the?
He got apprehended.
Okay,
and they got mugshots of him and all that.
Male.
Male, white,
real male,
white. I think it's a 14-year-old boy.
Yeah, okay.
Real male. He was born a male.
Yes,
and he's a male.
Yes.
So there's all sorts of,
Yeah.
what happened. He might have been in the classroom, left the classroom to go get the gun. The door locked behind him and he couldn't get in. So, but we're not going to get into those details. The point is not to.
At least not yet.
Yeah, at least not yet. We'd like to get there.
We'll let the dust settle a little bit.
That's right. But here's Kamala that afternoon talking about the school shooting.
And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive. We had fire drills, but our kids are sitting in a classroom where they should be fulfilling their God-given potential, and some part of their big, beautiful brain is concerned about a shooter busting through the door of the classroom. It does not have to be this way.
Number one, get your kids out of public schools.
Yeah.
Number one.
And number 2 is like unto it.
Get your kids out of public schools. Number 3, get your kids out of public schools.
Right.
Now, that's a big thing.
Well, and what I hope she was going to say that it's a shame that we have to send our kids to public schools worried about the evolution curriculum.
Right. Right.
Worried about the sex education.
Right.
Worried about the abortificants being handed out to schools. Worried about the emasculating drugs that they could get at public schools.
Yeah.
Yep. It's all the danger. It's amazing how dangerous the public schools really are.
Yeah. And have been for decades.
And in and of themselves.
Before any shootings.
That's right.
We were letting kids go to these public schools, these government schools for decades where they were being shot at all day long.
By the teachers.
By their teachers. With deadly, poisonous lies.
Yeah.
This is really interesting. If you watch a little longer of the whole clip, this is actually, I have to give Kamala some respect here.
No.
Yeah,
Props?
little props.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. She made a whole coherent sentence. There wasn't any mess
That is
ups,
true.
anything from her.
We did understand that.
And here's what's crazy. She's not working off of a prompter. She actually decided herself to, she says it earlier.
She didn't talk about it.
She actually says, I'm going off a script here. And I was like, oh, this should be interesting. But so she spoke very clearly, went off script, and she made her statement. And
but that's because she's talking about her God. It was pretty easy for her to
Public
go off script.
well, she's always talking about her God. But Obama actually tweeted and said it doesn't have to be like this. It's really interesting to me that
what are we giving her props for?
well, just the fact that she
had
made
a
it through a complete
sentence.
sentence. That she didn't.
Tell me, I already forgot.
I thought you were gonna I thought there was more of a punchline than that. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to point that part out a little bit. I just like, well, wait.
You got my hopes up. I thought she actually said something.
Now
good.
you made me forget what I was going to say about the second part of what I was going to say. It'll come back. It'll come back.
Well, but she says like she's referring to what did she say? God-given. What did she say about God? Just play it again.
And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive. We had fire drills, but our kids are sitting in a classroom where they should be fulfilling their God-given potential.
Oh, okay. That's it, right?
And
That's right. God-given potential. Right, but
Thus saith evolution.
Right, they're sitting in those classrooms all day long being told they have no God-given
That's right.
potential.
That's exactly right.
They're sitting in those classrooms. It's illegal to tell them that they have a God-given potential.
Right.
That it came back to me. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you for playing the clip once
There you
again.
go.
There you go. We got it. I'm excited now. I'm excited.
So there's a couple things here. We remember we talked, was it yesterday, talked about the clip from Callie and Casey. And one of the things that they pointed out was that the whole thing that changed Casey was the idea that they were trying to fix the problem by going and dealing with the symptom. Right? That was everything they were trying to do was symptom based.
And he ended up in surgery.
Surgeries or drugs.
And so there was no way for them to really fix the problem at the symptom. And we got to it
at the root.
At the root. By fixing the symptom, you can't fix the whole problem.
Right. Yeah.
But notice what they want to do here. This is all about, we all know it, they want to actually put legislation together that bans you from owning a firearm.
Right.
And they think by banning the firearm that you then
That's really good,
will
Knox.
not be able to have school shootings.
Surgery.
And
let's
exactly.
amputate. It's like going into the
Amputate the
doctor
gun.
and you skinned your knee. You know, and he's like, let's amputate.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
it. Got a skinned knee. Don't you want me to fix it?
I was trying to find the number. Bree, do you remember the exact number of school shootings, the total school shootings since this
This year.
It was like
this year?
41.
I can find it.
Yeah, find it.
Somebody
because
said-
I thought I saw
she said
212 or something like
50.
that.
Oh, you mean
I think
just
total.
this year?
But
This
I
year?
wanted the total of school shootings that we can think
ever.
of. Ever.
Ever.
So deaths, that's fine. I'll take the total deaths in school. I don't care if they're suicide. I don't care what they are. Give me the total deaths at school, whatever that number is.
The total deaths in school from shootings since 1982 was 200.
Since 1982, 212.
People have died in public school from shootings.
Okay, I just
Amputate.
want to right. And what we want to do right now, first of all, I'm a pro-life guy.
Yeah.
Every one of those lives is absolutely important and essential and are made in the image of God. And I want the death penalty for someone coming after these innocent children.
That's right.
Just like the Bible says.
Just like the Bible says. But if we had to play a game of deaths around children, I will give you all of those. I will take it. I will take the breath of it and say, wow, that's horrible. Okay, it's on me.
Yeah.
What do you do with the millions of babies that you kill in one day or year?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What do you do with that? Because you're not trying to ban forceps.
We average about 3,000 a day.
3,000 a day.
Yeah.
A day.
Yeah.
Doggone.
That's a 9/11 every day.
Every day.
Yeah, that's right.
Like there goes the problem.
Yeah.
Right there. And the more that we're going to go through the show, you're going to see how that right there is going to be a problem, not just in the issue of what's happening at schools, but everything else that's happening in life.
And this is fundamentally because we do not understand what civil government is for.
Yes.
So
even before that, we don't understand what justice is for.
Yes.
What's our standard for justice and all this?
Right. But again, God-given potential.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in God-given potential.
Yes.
I believe in God-given purpose.
Yeah.
But in order to know what that purpose and potential is, you got to know that God who
And
gives
teach them
it.
in the classroom.
Yeah, you got to know that God.
Because they're persons.
Right, that's right. And so
we hold them valuable.
But I think this goes back to, this is a great connection, Knox, but it's the, when the government gets involved, you are asking for them to only deal with the symptoms rather than the root.
That's right.
The thing that civil government is called by God to do, Romans 13. Come on, guys. Romans 13.
Yeah.
God gave them a sword to punish evildoers. They can praise the righteous and they can punish evildoers. That's their job.
Yeah.
And so when you are at the one thing they do is war and criminal justice.
That's right.
I mean, they use the sword, but other than that, they're not made to deal with root problems. Yeah. It's like trying to do the root problem. It's like, I've got a skinned knee, I've got a headache, and all they've got is a sword.
I'm gonna chop it off.
That's what you're going to get. You're always going to get the amputation, or you're going to get the chemical sword.
Yeah,
or you're going to get prison time, or you're. But it's you can't get to the root with that tool. It's not made for that.
So here's the problem with how Knox started off this whole comments from Kamala is he's trying to give her props for speaking clearly when she's actually speaking very confused.
She's thinking very confused.
It was a complete sentence that is
God-given potential,
right.
and we don't teach God in public schools.
That's right.
That's
right,
confusing.
Right. And well, why are kids shooting up schools?
Yeah.
Because they're being told all day long their lives don't matter.
There's no morality. There's no morality. Absolute transcendent morality.
Everything's an accident.
That's right.
You're chaos, and nothing really matters ultimately. And believe in yourself.
And so here's the thing: is this video from 2019 is just kind of continued down this path of like,
this is
no one cares about justice. She doesn't care about justice.
Well, she does.
For if she only wields it for her own power.
Right. It's a twisted view of justice, because as soon as you don't actually, like, she's saying God-given potential.
Yeah.
Like, she's swearing.
Yeah.
Like she's totally using
God's name in vain.
She's using God's name in vain there.
Yeah,
she doesn't mean that.
That's
as soon as that God goes away, justice is arbitrary.
Yeah.
And as soon as it's arbitrary, you got different standards for different people.
And we're talking about specifically something that happened to black people here in America. So we have to be specifically targeting to help those people, because we put those people in a position, and everybody knows the history. Yeah. Everybody understands the history of America.
That's right.
America, you did this to these people. You should write laws for these people. Don't group us in with everybody, because everybody didn't happen to everybody.
So that's Uncle Luke in North Carolina, and they're at, I think, his barbershop, and they're kind of doing this. Kamala Harris in 2019 stopped by for some sort of little barbershop roundtable. And so for those who can't see, Uncle Luke is black, and he's obviously referencing, how blacks have historically been treated.
Yep.
And that he says these people have been, treated not well.
Right.
And then so what we need to do is craft laws for these people.
Right. Don't
specific
group them
laws
in with everyone else.
That's right.
We need to make laws for these people.
And all this is Jim Crow laws all over again. This is Jim Crow 2.0, but now the blacks are actually arguing for, hey, we need special laws now.
I wonder what laws he would think would be good for these people.
My guess
First of all, the whole thing is really convoluted, because whatever he thinks that America has done, he connects the individual and then Black Americans as a whole as if the same thing has happened to all of them everywhere.
Right. And
it hasn't. Whatever has happened to your forefathers didn't happen to you. So whatever justice needs to be happening doesn't need to happen to you, and you can't fulfill the justice of a time that you can't reach.
Right.
So then I want to know, like, what is it he wants done for the people now, right? Like, what is it that has been done to them? So if we're going to talk about justice, what is the crime that you think has been done? Because he's using a standard to make this statement. What is the crime that has been done, and what do you think should happen in that moment? Yeah. But it's so convoluted. He's just talking generally, doesn't apply to anybody. That's not what the law does. Right. It says, okay, this person has been offended. It doesn't say that everybody in my family can then act like a victim in that situation. Right. No, that person has been offended. That's where the justice needs to be targeted and directed at.
Right. In all the old paintings and sculptures, Lady Justice, she's blindfolded or blind, so you can see her eyes are either empty, or there's a blindfold.
Right.
And
what's
there's
that symbolic of the blindfold?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
And a set of scales and a sword.
Yeah.
And first of all, you see somebody with a sword and they're blindfolded.
Yep. Be careful.
Yeah.
Be careful. Watch out.
Stay a little distance.
What this is referring to is the biblical principle that justice is blind. In Deuteronomy chapter 1 and other places, the law of God requires that judges not regard the face of man. Do not fear the face of man. Do not regard the face of man or their persons. That's why Lady Justice is pictured blind. She's blindfolded or she's blind, because it's justice is, and that's why the scales represent, is equal.
Yeah.
It's the same standard, whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're short, whether you're tall, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're male, whether you're female.
Right.
So he wants Lady Justice to lift up her you're black. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, you're white. Never mind. You're Asian. Never mind.
We got a separate different laws for you.
Yeah. But what that means is you don't have justice.
You won't get it.
Justice that tries to put he's asking her to put a finger on the scales.
Yes.
But you got to remember that as soon as you start putting fingers on the scales, now it's not equal. Now what is it up to?
Yep.
Well, it's up to her bleeding heart.
Yeah.
It's up to the mob that's begging you to do something or demanding you do something with their guns.
Right.
Do it now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but it's dangerous to do that.
Right.
Because you're talking about the civil magistrate. You're talking about violence.
Yeah.
Like they have a ministry of violence, and it's either justice where it just says, look, you murdered, your life is forfeit. You know, you're dead. You stole, okay? With my sword, I'm going to threaten you. You have to restore that with restitution. You got to go make it right. You got to put that back and make it balanced again. But as soon as there's fingers on the scale, it's arbitrary, it's capricious, it's based on mob, it's based on feelings, it's based on sentiment, it's based on manipulation, it's based on bribery, it's based on fear. And now you got a sword coming down. Now you got a sword and it gets violent.
And it doesn't, and if you start judging like that based off of a person's race, it doesn't ever stop there. Now it's also judging, and you look rich.
Right.
And you know, you also look pretty wealthy. How much do you have? And it takes all those other things into consideration. When
you're not
that's
supposed to.
not. Yes,
you're supposed to just weigh out the justice and then punish evildoers.
I know this is going to probably feel like a different topic, or maybe
it's
a
not.
jump for our audience. I want you guys just to hang in here with us, because I want to talk about the Venezuela illegal immigration happening.
That is the violence.
Yeah, that's right.
That is the violence.
And Venezuela immigrants apparently have taken over some apartments in Chicago. Apparently, there's some Venezuelans taking over some apartments in Aurora, Colorado. There's some dispute on some of the details of what's happening and how much it's happening and so forth. But here is this gentleman on the ground in Colorado talking about some of the things that he saw or he's seen from kind of an eyewitness testimony.
If I told you this was happening in 2024, would you believe me? In Aurora, Colorado, there's a Venezuelan gang that has taken over 2 apartment buildings. I kid you not. The landowner has contacted the local authorities. They said there's nothing they can do about it. That's squatter laws, bro. I kid you not. Look this up. Laws. Number 2, he went to the FBI. They said there's nothing they can do. And he even went to the marshals, y'all. And this Venezuelan gang has taken over the apartment building. They're charging the tenants inside rent money like they're the landlords. Meanwhile, the real landlord can't get these people evicted. All the people that's leaving the apartment buildings, as soon as they leave, these Venezuelan gang members are just moving in more gang members to a point where they are taking over the building with guns.
So Kamala hasn't said anything about this. She hasn't said anything about the illegal immigration coming over and basically using squatter laws to take over apartments, which is what he referenced. He said squatter laws. But very quickly, she said something about the school shooting. Illegal immigrants coming over.
Well, because one of these things
apparently is using guns.
Politically helpful. The other is not.
That's right.
This goes back to justice using guns in so many ways.
Yeah.
And apparently... again, I'm open for more details being revealed in this whole process, but apparently these illegal immigrants are taking over apartment blocks and then going door to door and making those people pay rent.
Right.
While the landlord cannot collect rent and the landlord can't get the police to help. Apparently the police are maybe starting to help now.
Right. They at least released one video saying that they thought they had it under control, at least for one of the apartment complexes.
They've made some mistakes on that because they said, oh, what you see in the news is happening. It's not really happening. They was in front of the building and it was the wrong building that everybody was talking about. So they've had some missteps here in the way of communication.
Yeah, sure.
We saw this on a grand scale, though, in 2020. I mean, when you have mobs and riots in Minneapolis,
2 different laws,
and other cities burning police stations down, Seattle, the Chaz Chop thing.
Black Lives Matter wanted 2 different laws. Chaz wanted 2 different laws.
And to his point, so how, like, he's saying they're calling the cops, they're calling the sheriff, they're calling the FBI, and they said they can't do anything. Now, to whatever extent, like, they're trying to do something or can't do anything, it's like there's already precedent for them not doing anything. There are situations, and I'm told there are areas of cities where the cops just don't go.
Yeah.
Well, you got to remember that part of the role of the government, too, is that they are a terror to wickedness.
That's right.
Now, that terror even happens before they ever do anything bad.
Right.
So you understand what I'm saying?
That's what the death penalty is in part for.
So when someone feels safe enough to run into an apartment complex with guns at that peak of a level in front of kind of like the magistrate themselves, that means that they, whatever the situation
security
is,
cameras watching them go.
whatever the situation is, they don't fear the police. They don't fear the civil magistrate to do anything at all. So you've already lost because they feel like you're weak.
Right. Because even if you get arrested, you get released the next day.
Yeah, there was another video I saw. They were talking to an officer.
Will raise funds to bail you out.
Well, that was going to get there. There was an officer that somebody was talking to, and they were like, "Hey, can you at least call ICE?" And they were saying, "No, we're a sanctuary city, so we can't do that."
Two different laws.
So then they know you're weak.
Yeah, they exactly. They know
Two
you're weak.
different laws.
And this is part of the curse of Deuteronomy 28, right?
Right.
Your enemies will see that God is not with you and they will start taking you over.
Right.
And but this happens when we stop doing this. We can't miss this. The way that you regard life in the womb is going to have a domino effect to the way you regard every aspect of life. Every aspect of life. And so if you're not going to defend that.
This is a curse. You're totally right. But, I think even before that, you know what America first decided it was not afraid of? God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes.
The living God.
Yeah.
We decided in the churches that we did not fear God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many Christian churches do you see that, that you go to their website and they say, we fear the Lord?
Most of the time, it's Ichabod written over the top of it.
Most of the time, it says something like, basically something like, we don't fear God.
Mm-hmm.
Come on in your flip-flops.
Yeah,
Come on in. It's a party in here. Strobe lights. We got a coffee bar.
We got a women priestess.
Yeah. But we did this. We totally did this as we began accepting false doctrines of creation.
Yeah.
Oh, you can believe in evolution. We don't fear God. We did this with women roles. We said women can preach, women can teach. We do not fear God.
That's right.
We did this with sexuality. We did this. We did this. We didn't
even complementarianism.
Yeah, we let people. We let men and women divorce one another and break their marriage vows, and they were not. There were no church discipline, and we let them get remarried. No church discipline, because why? We do not fear God.
That's
so
right.
You don't fear earthly authorities for very long.
Yeah.
If you do not fear God.
Yeah. That's right.
Because
Well, and
they get their authority from God.
And you have no idea in concept what justice is.
Right.
You were talking about the lady Justice being blind. One of the things that I went back to, you went back to 2020 and Chaz. I'll just go back a little bit. We can keep going back if we wanted to. But
go back to the garden.
Yeah, I mean, we really could. But one of the areas that really stuck out to me was 2011.
Yeah.
When Occupy Wall Street happened.
Oh, there you go.
And a lot of
the 1%.
And it had a double effect because when they realized that they could occupy Wall Street, the rich folks, and come after rich folks, they thought that was fair. Because they have money. Right. And so then you have this whole movement that says, what's justice? Yeah, absolutely.
Same thing.
And so now what you have, so then, and nobody really said anything about it, but if it's okay to go after rich folks, nobody minds. Then you get all of a sudden.
And how about white folks?
Right. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, there's no justice there.
Because all the white folks are rich, basically.
Yeah. So then.
They're the oppressors.
Yeah.
And then you got the same thing with the Palestinian protests. I mean, it's something similar. It's like, this is cultural Marxism.
Yes.
There's the oppressor and there's the oppressed.
Right.
And the oppressed has a right basically to have a different law.
Right.
Because they're oppressed.
They can take over college campuses.
And Kamala in this is really interesting because could you imagine right now if she came out and said, listen, I'm going to set up a fund or I want you to support a fund that's going to bail out the Venezuelans out of jail.
Right.
Once they arrest them, we get them all arrested. Right. I think we should, because, what did they say about rioting is the voice of the unheard, the people who were stealing all the other company stuff while this rioting was going on. Yeah, I know you had a whole bunch of different things that were going on with George Floyd.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on.
There were police officers who were getting shot and killed, right? Like it's insane. And then we're talking about bailing out those people who have committed crimes. And here we are now. How does it feel?
Right.
To not have a judicious system where your communities and your neighborhoods now, and we did some of this stuff. We Kurt Cobained it, like we did it to ourselves. We did it. Yeah. We did it to ourselves.
You just verbed that.
Yeah. And God looked at it and is like, if you want somebody to tear it up, here you go.
But the crazy thing about this, though, of course, is that as soon as you become selective, it goes the other way too.
Yeah, it does.
So our friend Paul Vaughn.
Yep.
Oh man.
He and some friends.
He was squatting.
Were right.
I do not like that game.
No.
I do not like
He maybe he should try that defense. But he was part of a Planned Parenthood protest in which they were peacefully singing. They weren't planning to stay the night.
Yeah.
They were not squatting.
They weren't asking for rent money.
They were not asking for rent money. They were peacefully singing outside of an abortion clinic.
Inside the hallway.
In a hallway. Yeah. And he wasn't even there. He was running outside when the cop showed up to say, hey, it's just peaceful. We're going to be here for a little while and then we're going to leave. Yeah. There might have been a citation or something, but they peacefully left. Nothing happened.
There was no citations that day.
No citations that day at all. Okay, so nothing. The cops say, okay, they peacefully leave. A year later, the FBI Biden's FBI, Kamala's FBI is suddenly weaponized. They show up at like 7 a.m. at Paul Vaughn's house, banging on the door.
School.
They raided with guns drawn
on his kids,
on his wife, and they take him, they cuff him, they put him in a car, in a unmarked car, and drive off without telling his wife where he's going. It's hours before they know where he is. Okay, don't tell me the FBI can't do something. But but see, here's what happened. Why? Because it's selective. She's opening she's pulling up the blindfold, and she's, you're protesting Planned Parenthood? Nuh-uh.
Right.
Now, you're burning down a police station because you're, whatever. Like you oppressed people. That's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop there. Remember during 2020, who was the Canadian pastor that got arrested?
Well, James Coates.
But remember
Pastor Tim Stevens.
Remember on that day they arrested him and put him in the jail?
They released a child predator.
They released a convicted child molester with warnings.
To the public. Hey, we're releasing him, everybody.
Saying that they thought he had a high degree of likelihood of recommitting crimes.
They knew that.
They knew that.
Yeah.
While they're holding in their cell a Christian pastor for holding worship service.
They should have tried him and put him to death.
The pedophile.
The pedophile.
Right. I just saw a headline this morning, actually, coming out of Britain, that said that they're running out of room in their prisons, and they're planning to start releasing the lower level sex offenders.
Whoa.
Because they're running out of room. Meanwhile, is it in Ireland? They just arrested that teacher.
For like the third time too. This
is woke justice. This is cultural Marxist justice. It's the lady justice has taken her blindfold off, and now she's put her fingers on the scales, and she's trying to play God. But she's doing it with a sword.
Right.
And that turns violent. The other thing I was going to say is there's a backlash to this. I mean, and part of what the cultural Marxist agenda is trying to stir up a kind of revolution.
Right.
That's like, go back to Marx. They want
it's a power play.
They want to stir up discontent, envy, bitterness, and they want a revolution that the oppressed people groups revolt and then somehow create a utopian society where it all balances out.
Right.
But the thing is that you have when you do that, so they're trying to stir up trouble. And let's say they have taken over several apartment complexes. We don't know exactly how much they've taken over. And the apartment complex owners are calling the FBI, calling the police, please help. And you got these guys with guns in there, and the cops aren't coming. What does that do? At some point, some owner is going to get out his gun.
He's going to take justice in his own hands.
Honestly, that should have happened in the beginning, though. At some point, though, he has a personal right to defend.
But this is asking for that kind of chaos. That kind of violence. And I think
you said Kyle Rittenhouse. Is that what you said? Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse. Yeah. But on a wide scale, that's chaos.
Yes.
On a wide scale.
Well, that's why he was there, is because you got police and tanks and everything running around, and here this whole situation is going down.
But I think but Kyle Rittenhouse, from all I can tell, seems like a cool dude.
Yes.
Who was seeking to actually be helpful and useful. But when you don't have that, if you've been educated in public schools and you've been told your life is worthless, and you look around and you see chaos, and maybe a couple of your siblings have been aborted. And your dad left you. And your mom. And they've been hopping you up on Ritalin. And they've been telling you you're a white male. And your life is worthless and you're an oppressor. And you need to confess your white guilt. What does that do? Well, at some point you say, well,
screw it all.
I'm going and I'm going to shoot it up. I'm going to shoot this. It doesn't matter. Survival of the fittest. I'm going to take justice into my own hands because that's what they already did. Lady Justice is taking justice into her own hands. Mom and dad are taking justice into their own hands. They're just creating it out of thin air, playing God.
Yep.
And so what do? Well, I'm going to take justice into my own hands.
That's right.
I'm going to go shoot up a school.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with, is it James Jordan's tribe, nation, empire setup?
Yeah, a bit.
I've been thinking about that and marketing. This has all kind of been in my head. It's because I work with Darren.
I like where your brain goes.
Manufacturing.
He's like, that reminds me of James Jordan and marketing.
Yeah, no, it's true. So one of the things that happens when the empire falls apart is you get tribes and nations. If the nation falls apart, then you get more tribes coming together.
Yeah.
And I think we're about at that point where, people don't feel the Constitution really is in play anymore. You have local nations not protecting their
own people.
It's nation state. Their own people.
Yeah.
The sheriff is falling apart, and so what you end up having is you're going to have tribes that stick together.
Right.
Branding came from the idea of if this was mine, it had the mark on it.
Mm-hmm.
And as people would say, it wasn't so that people could say, oh, it has this person's mark on it, let me take it back to them. It was to say, it has that person's mark on it, and I know those people, and they don't play. Mm-hmm. And if I take their stuff, they're gonna come for me.
Right.
Branding was to let everybody know this is not who you touch. This is not the stuff you touch.
Yeah. That's my sheep.
That's my sheep. That's my
cow.
people.
Yeah.
And I think Christians and a lot of people have taken this for granted. The tribe you want to run to is the church. If we're going to have to regroup, I want to regroup around the table. I want to regroup around baptism. I want to regroup around the fellowship of the saints. Because and the word of God, absolutely, all that. Yeah, it's the Lord's Supper, but that's word tasting. But I think we're going to have these strong Christian havens that let people know if we're not going to get the support that we really need to have from our you don't touch these folks. And I'm going to tell you something. People in the street know there's certain people you can touch and there's certain people you can't touch. Right. And I want to get back to the place where people, okay, if this is collapsing in one sense, let it not collapse on us.
Yeah.
Right? Like we need to make sure that we are protecting our folks still in a certain kind of way where people are like, nah, man.
And that begins with the fear of the Lord.
Oh, yes.
And because again, walk this all back. If you don't fear God, then you won't rightly fear earthly authorities.
Yes.
You won't understand that authority comes from God. Right. Authority comes from Christ. Yes. All authority is in Christ. And because it's from him, we've got to practice. We have to, I'm just going to borrow Kamala's. We got to use that God-given potential. Yeah. we got to do that God-given potential. We have to.
Yeah.
Because it comes from God. Yeah. You don't have your power. There's no authority except from God.
Yeah.
So the point is though, so you start with fear of God, which is why worship is central.
Yeah. Yes.
Lord's Supper,
absolutely.
Baptism, worship, that's central. Sing the Psalms, gather with God's people, but actually fear God, which means you're actually going to go obey his word.
Yes.
Which then establishes family government, church government, civil government, which have different jobs. And church and family are the governments that God has established to actually get to the root of the problems.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Those are the ministries of health and education. Who's going to get to the root of why grandma's got diabetes? Who's going to get to the root of why we got all this food problems and all this? It's a family's job to sort that out.
Yeah.
We need the government, the civil government needs to use its sword to protect against theft and lies.
Yep.
And witch doctors, people who are trying to scam people, they're to make sure there's be honest weights and measures, equal weights and measures.
Yeah.
But then the family's job is to do health and education, teaching their children, teaching them that they were made in the image of God, that they have God-given potential, that they have a God-given mission, and the church is there alongside, assisting, teaching, and holding them accountable to God's moral standards.
And we better have I'm sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
No, just the last thing is just to your point. Also, though, including if you want that, the reason why the church is the haven, the reason why that Christian community is the haven is because that also teaches that men have a responsibility to protect their families.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They have a duty before God to protect. They're to love their wife as their own body, which includes self-defense.
Yes,
which includes being armed and ready to defend your family and your neighbor as needed.
Yes.
And so it's a spiritual
love
provision.
God, love neighbor.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. It's the fear of the Lord, though, is what leads directly to a man who's then practicing justice in his own family and is protecting his family.
Yeah.
And the church and pastors and elders and deacons practicing justice and church discipline and teaching the word faithfully and honestly and truthfully. That's what is setting everyone up to be the most just in their roles. They're discipling people to be just because they fear God. Use this power carefully. You've got this power from God. You're a dad, you're a mom, you're a teacher, you're a magistrate, you're a police officer, you're a sheriff. Use your power obediently to God. And that's why historically Christian cities and Christian tribes were safe.
Right.
Was because they feared God and they did what he said. And that is created a just community.
Well, and this is, I'm sorry, Gabe. I was just thinking, like, the way things are going and the way it's kind of looking, and I don't like this at all, and I hope it doesn't go any further than this, but if we're getting overrun, and if you don't have a good handle on the law of God, when to operate, how you need to operate, when you need to defend, what defense looks like, when you're when it's judicious to act this way, because sometimes you can just you can use it. It could be revenge instead of actually lawful, like you have with Abner and was it Joab in that situation, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think we want to be the kind of people that if our brothers in another state call for us,
right,
because they couldn't defend the things that are being taken from them,
right,
that we would go to give them aid.
Right.
And that might take on different situations, but we need to know what that line is. Right. The word of God has instructed us in all ways, so we know how then to engage, because right now, the church, y'all, we all we got. That's, you know what I mean? Like,
and we struggling.
And it doesn't mean that the church is automatically perfect.
No.
It just means that it's
nobody else got an answer though.
No, it's right. But
nobody else had an answer.
But we do have God's word, and we do have God's spirit, which is at work in his people, teaching us justice.
Yeah.
Teaching us how to love mercy, how to walk humbly with God, how to do these things right. And at least there's accountability. There's a standard. Because again, you go back to, if evolution is true and there is no God above, then you just got to make it up as you go along. There's no standard. How are you going to tell the police officer he's wrong?
Right.
Like, when you were arrested during COVID, I mean, it's like, I was standing there talking to the police officer.
Don't do this.
And I'm saying, you don't do this. You're going to regret this. This is wrong. You have a duty before God to do justice. This is not justice.
Yeah.
I was able to appeal to his higher authority.
Yeah.
The chief of police is not your boss.
Yeah.
He's not your chief boss. He's one boss. But Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He's over your boss.
Yeah.
And you need to obey him. That's why it says that Christians are to submit in the Lord.
Yeah.
A wife submits in the Lord. Children obey in the Lord. We submit to magistrates in the Lord. Pastors in the Lord.
Not unlimited submission.
Not unlimited power.
But we better learn the doctrine of biblical defense too.
Yes.
Because we have a lot of people that still have the gospel coalition kind of smoke on them. Mush. And then they would say, oh, well, you don't. Wait, hold on. You ain't taking my mama's house.
Yeah.
I promise you that.
Yeah.
Right? That's not happening. You ain't taking my brother's house. Like, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
And so we better learn, no, you actually have a biblical right to defense.
We actually had a practice of that. I mean, in 2020, when after those BLM riots, there was an attempt to spread those sort of riots from Seattle over
into Idaho,
and they started driving over in buses and vans and cars and stuff over, and I think they got maybe even just a little bit into Central Washington, Seattle corridor is this bright blue progressive.
They're just bending over to everything,
and then as soon as you get out of there, it's red.
Yeah,
and I don't think they were very far out of town.
No, I've heard.
Pulled into some
that
towns.
Sheriff. I forget the sheriff's name.
Pulled into some town, and they're all the good old boys
are wearing
showed
guns.
up. All the Kyle Rittenhouses showed up with their ARs, standing with the sheriffs.
Yeah,
standing with the sheriffs, and those cars pulled in and looked around.
See you later.
Standing around with their guns.
Yeah.
And
they got back on the bus.
But they came all the way over to Coeur d'Alene.
Same thing happened.
And the same thing in Coeur d'Alene. They were driving into Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, and there was a lot of the same thing happening. There was a bunch of dudes showed up, and they said, no, not here.
Is that your pen?
You need my pen? Yeah.
No, I was thinking, no, the medallion. I was thinking about that because I would love to talk to Daryl Wheeler, Sheriff Wheeler, and see what his response would be in this.
Yeah.
Because this is what you want to know from your sheriffs. If this is not happening in your state right now, in your city, in your town, you want to know from your sheriff what is going to be their course of action.
Right.
And the other thing you want your sheriff to know is, if you need me, I will stand with you.
Right.
Because they don't always know that.
Boy, we learned that in COVID.
We did learn that. Yes, your sheriff needs to know your churches,
Yeah.
that he has a support staff, because they don't have always the amount of people that they need to do something.
Right.
But especially if it's going to be to face off against the government, right? For whatever reason. Oh, we come to get this guy. We come because
that's why when we talked, like, I mean, even with Paul Vaughn.
Yes.
We talked
His
to him.
sheriff.
We talked to him because we asked, like, so
Where's your sheriff?
Where's your sheriff? And he said, I tried to talk to him, and it was like, you know, we don't know about those kind of things. But like, you know, if FBI is banging on your door because, you know, you didn't wear the mask, you didn't take the jab, you were singing at an abortion clinic.
Yes.
You were teaching in a school, and you told them that boys are boys and girls are girls, and you don't use the pronouns.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the FBI comes knocking at your door, like they're doing in Ireland now.
Yep.
Can you call your sheriff?
Yeah, because your first point of defense.
Can you call your sheriff?
Your lesser magistrate.
That's right.
So that's one of the key principles of Protestant resistance theory, going all the way back to Augustine.
Yep.
And his just word theory is that lawfully established magistrates are the first line of defense, all the way down the line.
Right.
You know, you got a sheriff deputy that lives down the street.
Yes.
Call him up.
That's right.
Sir, I didn't break any laws.
Yeah.
Would you please negotiate with the FBI?
Right.
Would you please defend? You know, will you do that and have that conversation now?
Yeah.
At least don't let them raid my house.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, if you want me to peacefully turn myself in, how about I ride with my sheriff down to your office a little bit later today? I'll be glad to have a meeting with you. Right. But I'm not a violent criminal.
Yeah.
There is no need for you to raid my house like I'm some kind of violent criminal.
Yeah.
I'm flashing guns at my kids and my wife. But the same, you know, we need to have these relationships.
Have to have them
now.
Yeah.
We need to be discipling. I mean, you probably, pastors that are watching or listening to this, you probably have law enforcement in your church.
Yeah.
Are you discipling them?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the apostles are doing that in their letters.
Yeah.
You know, use your power justly. You're a slave owner. Use your power justly. You're a slave. Use your power justly. You a father. You a mother.
Right.
You a pastor. You an elder. Use your power justly.
That's right.
We got to be discipling the sheriff deputies, the cops, the people. You know, military. You got military men.
Yeah.
Are we teaching them?
Yeah.
You know, there's a line. You can't just do whatever you're ordered.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't just say, "Well, I've got orders."
Well, I think people should not miss what you're saying about fearing God.
Yeah.
I mean, do not miss that, because
central point.
This is if you don't fear the Lord, then you want the people to fear you. If you're a leader, you don't fear the Lord,
and
you
what
want
do they
people
got?
to fear. Right.
They got a sword. They
That's
got
right.
guns.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
They got guns.
And they want power.
Right.
They want power over you.
Right.
So fearing the Lord is like, Proverbs chapter 1 is like, this is like the most basic instinct of a Christian. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. It's the beginning of it, right? It's the beginning of knowledge, right?
Yep.
And so fearing the Lord actually sets up your mayor or your sheriff that we've been talking about, or your local magistrate, or, it sets up the rightly ordered way of viewing our government.
That's a really good point, Gabe. I was just thinking about David. When he sees Goliath, because the fear of the Lord is in him, he's like, who is this guy? He's filled with
defying
anger.
the armies of the living God.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Saul deputizes him in the process. There's still a way of authority that's set up in order to be able to do it. It's really good.
But this gets into the conversation on Christians running America, Christian nationalism, Christian, return to a Christian America.
Right.
Is that there's you go back to Exodus. We've brought this verse up before, the section up before, Exodus chapter 18 verses 21, where Jethro is exhorting Moses, hey man, you kind of need to restructure things. It's too busy for you. You got too much on your shoulders. And he said, so you need to elect men. You need to put men in power. And he says, moreover, look for able men from all the people, the men who fear God. Number one,
fear of God,
who are trustworthy.
No. Men first.
Men who fear God,
men who fear God,
and hate a bribe.
Yeah.
There's this whole NPR podcast going around called Extreme America, and they interviewed me, and they interviewed Doug, and they've interviewed some people.
They quoted me.
They quoted you and everything, and it's funny because you listen.
I didn't make the cut, huh?
You listen to the.
Good.
Oh, there's a different law for you.
Oh, they said I was pretty spicy.
Yeah, there's a different law for you.
They said I was real spicy.
Want these people to get these laws.
He was oppressed.
Yeah. He interviews me and asks the question. He says, in a Christian nation, would Jews be allowed to vote? Because he was Jewish. That was very important to him. Would Jews be allowed to vote? And he cuts off the last half of what I said.
Of course.
But I said, in a Christian nation, no, Jews would not be allowed to vote because they don't know how to love their neighbor. They don't fear God. Why in a Christian nation, why would I want to elect a non-Christian who wants, instead of fearing God, he wants everyone to fear him? And so this NPR, he asked this question, and I said, no, because, non-Christians, including Jews, don't know how to love God. They don't know how to fear God. They don't know what's best for a society because you don't have God's standard. You don't fear God. And then he kind of cuts off. I said a little more than that.
I would say every Christian gets to vote as long as they're a Christian. I don't care what they are.
Exactly. and then so I went on to say, that got cut off. I said, but you will be more free.
Absolutely.
You will be more free in a Christian society. Just because you don't have the right to vote doesn't mean you aren't going to be free.
Right.
You will be actually more free. And I just kind of went down the list. I said, there'll be no Department of Education. There'll be no property taxes. There'll be no this. There'll be no, it's like all of a sudden you'll have way more freedom under a Christian nation. But that's because when Christians fear God, it's good for their city. When Christians fear God, it's good for their nation. Proverbs says this, and the righteous, when the righteous rule, everyone rejoices.
There'd be no Chaz, that's for sure.
There'd be no Chaz.
Right.
And so, just kind of thinking about this as it relates to Venezuela, as it relates to the public school shootings. It's like we got all these elected leaders, including Republicans, who do not fear God. And so we get the kind of crappy justice that we're getting right now. We get the kind of cowardly leaders that we have now because we do not fear God.
Preach.
We should be begging for rulers who fear God. And yet we're fighting David French. And we're fighting even Mid-Eva and Big Eva on this stuff.
Right.
I think that's coming, Gabe. I think that's coming.
We got Dusty Devers.
I think you're right. But I think what's happening, and this is kind of coming full circle, but I think eventually the wicked are going to, or should I say, the average citizen is going to say, where am I the most freest at? And that's what we start happening.
Where am I going to be safe?
Christian Idaho.
I'm not separating. Well, I think that's why you saw the mass separations from large cities into different enclaves.
That's why a bunch of Christians moved here during COVID because they saw, Christians are having an influence on this city.
Yeah, but
their pastors are actually trying to deal with COVID as opposed to abdicating COVID.
Yeah, but that Florida was another place that people moved to. Nashville, Tennessee was another place. You got people in Texas. Everybody was making decisions about that very thing right there.
Where do I want to be if this happens again?
And I think you have guys that are not Christians. You got Rogan and you got a bunch of other Elon who are thinking to themselves, okay, who at least has an objective standard of truth and justice that I want to be associated with, because that's who I'm going to want to hire. That's who I'm going to want to lead. That's who I'm going to be around, because I'm going to get a fair case in this. And it's not the first time we face it in history. Christians who in history have always been the ones like, okay, the judicial system is messed up. We're going to bring our case to you. You hear it. Tell us what do we want to do. But if we don't have a good rooted understanding of God's word, fear of the Lord, the law of God, how it works.
Not taking any bribes.
We're not going to be any different from the world.
Right. I'm just thinking, I thought of this quote from C.S. Lewis. I can't remember which book this is from.
It ain't a show if we don't end without C.S. Lewis.
I just found it. He says, of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. Omnipotent moral busybodies.
Kamala.
The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience. They're doing it for our good. That's what all of this is. That's what all of this. We're taking your guns away for your good. We're going to give you that shot for your good. You need a surgery for your good. We're just going to amputate that for your. This is for your good. And it's the same thing with power. Why do they want the power, Gabe? It's in their minds for your good. We're going to keep you safe.
COVID was all for our good.
It's always for good.
6 feet apart. It's always for good.
But that's the thing. So like, most of these people who are running up these stairs, are trying to grasping for power, grabbing these levers for power. Most of them have convinced themselves this is for good. This is for the greater good. Lots of them go to churches. Lots, and so that's what they're doing. Omnipotent moral busybodies. And the fundamental thing here, the fundamental thing here is, if there is no God, and Pastor Wilson has said this, people, then you are trying to get his job.
Yeah,
you see a job opening, right? And so if you have no God above, then you are necessary. Like somebody's got to have that power. Somebody's got to be exhaustively sovereign.
Right.
If God is not exhaustively sovereign, then it's going to be whoever has the biggest gun.
Yeah. And this gets into the arbitrary nature of what's going on. Kamala Harris can bail out all the Black Lives Matter violent protesters and won't bail out Paul Vaughn.
Right.
Like that's what happens. They actually it just broke that the dad of the Georgia shooter was arrested.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Arrested, and he was hit with murder and manslaughter charges.
Interesting.
By what standard, though?
Yeah.
By what standard?
Right.
What? I mean, I'll just say initially, again, without knowing any details, if this young man's convicted,
he could be.
His dad should watch his son go to the death penalty.
Right. And if the dad knew about it or was
some sort of accomplice,
then there could be a accomplice charges that go along with that, and that could depending could mean that he needs to be convicted too.
Pastor, you were just talking about the fact that the job opening and that people, if there is no God, right? But I was thinking about we have to stop acting like there is no God as well as Christians.
That's right.
It's so. I keep going back to.
We have to stop
acting like there is no God. And what I mean by that is looking at Megan Basham and her book and all the setup is that we've been for a long time saying God doesn't care about those things.
Yeah, we take God's name in vain too.
Instead of saying,
that's right.
God said you can't do that.
Right.
God said no, that's wrong. No, God says you can't kill.
This is biologos.
We've missed so much about being like David, having a fervor for the law of God, where we say, wait, who is this person? No, God said you can't do this.
Right. Yeah.
And we have to have that kind of voice when we see wickedness, because we have such a passion for the holiness of God that we speak up in every area of life when we see a challenge.
I mean, when you see Tim Keller with homosexuals dancing in his offertory.
Yeah. During the Lord's Supper.
During the Lord's Supper?
Yeah, that's what it was.
I mean, that's the kind of thing where it's like...
Were they gay or did they just look gay?
They look gay.
They just I don't know.
It was so effeminate.
Yeah, it's very effeminate.
It's a soft version of the French Olympics.
That's blasphemous.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing this effeminate thing in God's sanctuary.
Yeah.
And it's bleeding out all into society.
And where were the tables turned over? Who stood up to him and said, that's an abomination. We're not doing that in here. This is God's house. We're not doing that.
I was on a show last night. It should be dropping actually maybe tonight. And we were talking about the whole NSA video, middle finger, serrated edge, and all that stuff. And I said, what you're seeing in the uproar in all this is what is actually being exposed in all this is massive hypocrisy in church leaders nationwide. Now, some of those church leaders haven't even spoken out against us, whatever, but here's my point is, J.D. Greer talks about how God whispers about sexual sin.
Right.
Ed Linton, for 2 years as Southern Baptist president, had all this, plagiarized sermons out there.
Right.
And they didn't do anything about him.
How many SBC churches have women pastors?
Exactly. Or women deacons.
Yeah.
Or women elders.
Right.
How many, the other thing I pointed out for me in my own experience, I was at 3 PCA churches in 3 different states, and all the pastors had some sort of sexual sin in their life or some sort of child sin in their life where they shouldn't have been pastors.
Yeah.
And that's nationwide. And yet NSA's video on
that's the thing that gets people worked up.
That's what gets you worked up, and it's directed towards idols.
Right. But what they're doing is they're giving the finger to God.
That's right. That's exactly right. There's more. There's more than one way to get the finger.
Right. God says
that's right.
If a man's household is not in order and they're not walking faithfully with God, then he's not an elder.
Yeah. And yet he insists on being an elder.
Right. Yeah.
F you, God.
That's you're defying the living God. You're not fearing God. You're not. You don't actually reverence Him. You don't trust His ways. And again, it's like as soon as you stop, to the extent that you stop fearing God, you start doing things your own way.
It's always going to get you in trouble,
which is going to be unjust.
Yeah.
And it's, I know there's all kinds of pressures, and sometimes the elder board's begging you, and the congregation is begging, please don't go. You're such a good teacher, and you're so charismatic. We've learned so much from you. But If we don't fear God, then you will fear man.
Yeah.
And you will bend justice. You will not do righteousness, and you end up in the situation that we are in.
Woo, that's heavy.
Yeah.
If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
Wanted. Young men to rebuild Western civilization. Must be unafraid of pain, blisters, intellectual rigor, and a lifetime of long shifts with swords and shovels, digging ditches, repelling invaders, and reading stacks of books taller than their fathers. Must be impervious to manipulative women of all sorts, giggling virgins, cyber skanks, and even full cauldrons of Karens or hand-wringing clergy, but always seeking to hear and heed the words of Lady Wisdom. Immune to the leadership of hypocrites and LARPing online masculinitods, unaffected by abusive authorities, petty professors, and all brokers of official respectability. Willing to hoist the Jolly Roger and Johnny Cash's favorite finger whenever faced with idolatry. Long-suffering joy and determination required. Must be willing to dwell among the tombs and graves of the long dead, seeking truths that cannot die. Exhaustion guaranteed. Conflict guaranteed. Mortality guaranteed. New St. Andrews College. Liberal arts for the undaunted.